welcome to our special show where we're going to look at the impact of Uniform Civil Code on society. We have in the past focused on UCC and women, but today we're looking at its impact on the social evil of child marriage. India aims to become free from child marriage by 2030 according to the Sustainable Development Goals. But what is the ground reality and just how far are we from reaching this goal? It's been claimed that if the Uniform Civil Code is implemented, then child marriages can be stopped with more ease. So far, one state, Uttarakhand, has implemented Uniform Civil Code and more claim they will follow soon. But will the UCC really be able to halt child marriages? Is child marriage related to religion, or does the reason lie deeper because of poverty or the centuries-long conditioning that communities are entrenched in? The big question is that we are discussing today is how can the Uniform Civil Code, what is the impact it's going to have on child marriages? To talk more about this, joining us today on the show, we have Bhuvan Ribhu, child rights activist, advocate and author, Lalita Kumaramangalam, former chairperson, National Commission for Women, and Dr. S.Y. Qureshi, former Chief Election Commissioner of India. Thank you so much all for joining us today on this show and on this very, very important topic. And Bhuvan, I'd like to begin with you. What is your comments on whether Uniform Civil Code will really help in combating child marriages? Because many claim that, there are a lot of more deeper issues involved when it comes to this social evil.
There are a lot of issues involved, but the biggest benefit is a uniformity in law itself. Right now, we have a Prohibition of Child Marriage Act, which essentially prohibits all marriages of children below the age of 18 years for girls and up to 21 years for boys. However, many high courts have ruled that under various cultural traditions, under various religious traditions, if a child has gotten married below this age, for example, there have been cases of children getting married under Muslim personal law, where they have been allowed. And high courts have held that this marriage is allowed in law. This confusion of law will become clear as soon as the Uniform Civil Code is applied and it is made mandatory that the Child Marriage Act supersedes all the other laws that exist in the country. So it is the law which creates a crime. It is the law which brings about the understanding of what is acceptable in society and what is not. This clarity of law is the first and the most important step for the elimination of child marriage. All the other related issues, whether it is poverty, whether it is trafficking, whether it is certain other cultural practices, would follow suit. The first is that we have to bring this uniformity in society. Child marriage is unacceptable as a crime. And a child who's at risk of getting married is a child who's at risk of getting raped. It is a child who's at risk of maternal death. That uniformity in law is the first and the most important step which Uniform Civil Code is going to bring about.
All right, I want to talk more about this with you about, penalizing the families. But first, I'd like to get Lalita ji's comments on this, your view on this issue, ma'am.
Yeah, I tend to largely agree with Mr. Ribhu. Laws are meant as deterrents. Now, the implementation of the law is extremely difficult. The implementation of the law lies in the hands of a whole, cross-section of society. So I don't think we should look at this or any other law for that matter in isolation. Much of how well and how efficiently this law is implemented will decide the success of this law. Now, as he has pointed out, the courts in different states have come up with different decisions regarding child marriages. Much of it is, I think even the Uttarakhand law has left tribals out. I wonder why, because, they're also human beings, little girls, and little boys, they really should not be forced into marriage. Child marriages is forced marriage. What do children want to do? Play, go to school, make friends, etc., etc. And if they are not allowed to do that, in most ways, their chance at living a full life itself is grabbed away from them. So I think the law is very important. I'm not saying it will stop it, but yes, it is the first step in seeing that child marriages are stopped.
No, an important point you made there about, tribals being left out in the Uttarakhand law as well. And
Yes.
We're going to see more of that, I think, when other states will implement it. S.Y. Qureshi, your comments on this. We did see in Assam, they cracked down on child marriages in a very hard way. We saw hundreds of people thrown into jail. What are your comments on this approach? Because it was a very harsh approach to take, but yes, perhaps this is needed because in Assam we have seen so many child marriages, but also many activists and many social workers have commented on how we need to do a lot more, as Mrs. Kumar Mangalam just pointed out, regarding education and changing society's mentality.
Yes, Gargi, in the first place, I think this debate is going to be counterproductive. While Uniform Civil Code is an extremely important subject, the child right is the even more important subject, and they need to be discussed together. If you bring the two together, you are making something which is absolutely acceptable, that they should, the Marriage Act should be enforced strictly, and if it is not being done, it is a lack of enforcement. Linking it with Uniform Civil Code, you are unnecessarily dragging it and linking it with a controversial subject. So, whereas child right, the issue is totally non-controversial, above any controversy. And now we talk of Uniform Civil Code in the context when the laws are different. Here, there is already a national law of the Child Marriage Act, and which cuts across all the communities. And the violation of that act also cuts across all communities. In fact, figures show that more Hindus have child marriages than Muslims. So who are we going to punish? Even now, after 40 years of this act, 25% of our marriages are below 18, which is illegal marriages. Lalita ji had pointed out that basically the issues which influence this thing is literacy, poverty. We are not talking about them. For instance, let us first settle the Hindu-Muslim issue and let us get it out of the way. Now, the 12 million children were married before 10. That is a figure, of which 84% were Hindus, more than their population, and 11% were Muslims and less than their population. Therefore, to make it a Hindu-Muslim issue is counterproductive. It's a common problem. And actually,
so definitely it is a common problem, yes.
And Jains, Sikhs and Christians have much better performance. And Hindus and Muslims are in the same boat, shoulder to shoulder. Therefore, it will only confuse the issue rather than bring focus on something which is lack of implementation. Still, 1 in every 4 marriages is still illegal. So we need to work very fast on that, and it has to. And then you can't start arresting. It has to be civic education, motivation, persuasion, behavior change, communication, and societal awakening.
All right, let me ask Bhuvan about that, because what we saw in Assam was criticized also, roundly because of this sort of harsh action taken by the government, throwing people into jail. Girls were left without any help. All that happened. Also, the fact that during the COVID years, we saw a sudden spike in child marriages, and we all know how much that happened, and we've reported extensively in the past. So yes, poverty is a huge issue. Society and the norms and cultures are another huge issue. So that's where we need to work harder at.
The problem is that we are in a country where, as Mr. Qureshi and earlier was said, if 23% of the children are getting married below the age of 18 years, and in 2022, as per the National Crime Records Bureau, we had 1,000 cases registered. It means that the law is not getting implemented or enforced. Now, why is the law not getting enforced? In the same year, in October 2022, there was a judgment of the Karnataka High Court where a 17-year-old girl has gone to the High Court saying that I have been forcibly married, I have been forcibly raped, I have been forcibly impregnated, and I am going against this marriage, and the High Court still granted bail to her accused husband, citing personal law. While I am completely in favor that the Child Marriage Act is the superseding law and should be enforced uniformly. Right. But in case there is a confusion regarding the implementation of the law is nothing but a piece of paper unless and until it is enforced. And the law must reach out to every single child. It is not a question of percentages. One child raped, one child impregnated, one child dying because of this force on her is one child too many. So the idea is that the law has to be applied uniformly. What this does is brings that uniformity in law. That's one side. Yes. The other is, if we are saying that children have to be married after the age of 18 years, then we must ensure access to education. till 18 years. Access to free education. Even if it is not compulsory, it must be free. Second is that there has to be mandatory reporting of child marriage. It is not a question of a boy who got married to a girl. But certainly if a 32-year-old man is saying that I am going to fall in love with a 12-year-old, that is not a case of love. It is a case of sexual predator using a 12-year-old child and bending the law according to the whims and fancies. And that is certainly unacceptable. The third is that in Assam, for example, it would be unjust of us to say that only the enforcement that happened with such vigorous approach was the only solution. Coupled with the enforcement, 200 crore rupees was also sanctioned by the government for the education, for the rehabilitation, for legal assistance to children who wanted to actually declare their marriages voidable, which is a process of law. Where do we start the law enforcement? Where do we start? Where is the first step?
All right,
so any enforcement of law, any case of child abuse, this is child rape. It has to be treated as such. Wherever we start is a good first step.
All right, S.Y. Qureshi, your comments on that, this lacune in the law in a sense, and where some are let go based on personal law.
Two things. Number one, I strongly feel and I repeat that bringing in personal law is going to confuse the issue, because the problem is in any case serious, and it's a non-implementation is across the board. He has mentioned one Karnataka cases. I will challenge him to name 5 cases in a country of 1.4 billion people. Because of that, he is giving ammunition to people who are looking for such excuses. Why is he making a Hindu-Muslim issue when it is not? It is a societal issue across the board. And in fact,
so
I would
courts
say...
also should not accept something like this.
Absolutely not making it a Hindu-Muslim issue. I would like to make it, put it on record. It is not a Hindu-Muslim issue. It is a tribal issue. It is a Hindu issue. It is your issue. It is my issue. It is all of us' issue. It's not a Hindu-Muslim issue.
Sir,
certainly not a Hindu-Muslim issue.
Yeah, but exactly. But the way you formulated it, it will convert into a Hindu-Muslim issue. And there are people who will be happy to grab this issue. I think we should keep this out, because there is unanimity in amongst all of us that we need to come down heavily. Now, coming to the other question, whether to make law stiffer, I think whenever somebody says dowry law, this law should be made stiffer, I think that's the most stupid suggestion to make, because already he was saying existing law is enough.
It's the implementation and enforcement of the law. Yes.
Exactly.
And the need to create more awareness around these issues. We'll slip into a short break right now and return with more, closing comments on this issue. Very important issue. We're discussing the societal evil of child marriages. Stay with us. Welcome back to our special show. We're discussing the society evil of child marriage that is still very prevalent across the country, and whether the Uniform Civil Code is something that can actually counter this. We've been talking to all our panelists, and now I have time for closing comments. Really, your last comments, given, we've discussed the various issues involved, and I'd like to start with you, S.Y. Qureshi. We have spoken about how this is something that needs to be approached in a more holistic manner. Implementation, enforcement is a huge issue. And of course, society conditioning is a huge issue when it comes to child marriages.
Correct. While we have all emphasized the importance of enforcement, in this case, I would like to say enforcement does not mean imprisonment. Because imprisoning millions and millions, crores of Indians, are you going to do that? Can anybody? So, therefore, what we need to do, enforcement means behavior change, communication program, drive to put the Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao. In fact, the Prime Minister has given a very good slogan: put all these girls in schools and up to university, give them free education. I did a book not long ago called Population Means Islam, Family Planning and Politics, where I have shown that illiterate women, if they marry at 17, if they finish 12th class, the marriage is delayed by 5 years. So answer, focus on education. And we have seen the poorest people marry early. The Law Commission also said that it is the indebtedness, dowry, and the poverty which force early marriage. address those issues. Focus on the states which are lagging behind by a vigorous behavior change communication, enrollment drive, income generation scheme, and the situation will improve because we have waited too long.
Absolutely. And I think the government also needs to realize in this, you need partnership with civil society, with NGOs, which unfortunately in recent years, we've seen NGOs, their impact lessening somewhat, but this is where we really need their help. Lalita Kumar Mangalam, your comments here.
Yeah. Now, the UCC, in this case, I think in any case, it shouldn't really be politicized. It's just that the UCC very clearly states that everybody is equal under the law. We already have several articles, what's called the Golden Triangle of the law in India, 14, 19, and 21, I think. But the fact is that the implementation of these changes across courts across the country. Now, along with the UCC, what we will need is persuasion to people to actually obey the law. One is, of course, education. The other that I think, which is equally important, is giving employment opportunities to young women. When women are educated and have a chance to work, marriage is delayed. Automatically, such evils will drop. But on the other hand, we also need to do a fair amount of education of the what we call target community amongst NGOs. That is, young girls should be taught that report it if you're being forced to get married. Like I said, the law can't be implemented in isolation. And yes, it should not be about religion. It should be more about attacking customs across the board, which go against child marriage. And it's not just girls who are getting married below the age of 18. It's also many young boys are being married. Child trafficking exists for many reasons, but marriage is also one of them. And I feel that also the authorities that do the implementation, the police, law, if there are NGOs such as, I think, Mr. Ribhus, and people like Mr. Qureshi, etc., all of us also need to work in tandem. We have to make sure that there is a coordinated and a very humane approach to it. Putting everybody in jail doesn't work. We need to persuade people to make sure and understand that not marrying their kids off at the age of, below 18 or 21 is better for them as families, economically, socially, in every other way. And then we implement the law. That's the true implementation of any
Right,
law.
absolutely. And creating more awareness, and here, news channels, etc., also need to do more on this rather than, focusing on just the latest political controversy of the day. This is where we need to create a lot of awareness. Finally, Bhuvan, your comments on this. And yes, what S.Y. Qureshi said, that Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao, really, and Bete as well, as Lalita Kumar Mangalam pointed out. So your comments on, what we've been discussing so far.
No social evil can be solved in isolation. So I think both the use or the force of love as well as the force of law is needed here. Either if we continue sloganeering, it is not going to solve. And if we go all out and say that millions of people should be put in jail, that is also not going to solve. It has to work simultaneously. The severity of punishment is not so much of the deterrence as the certainty of punishment. So certainty of punishment is more needed than the severity of it. Mr. Qureshi had mentioned earlier, I will be sharing some of the case studies, etc. But this is a book I have written, sir, on how to achieve the tipping point of child marriage by 2030. It is called When Children Have Children, and reaching the tipping point of ending child marriage by 2030 by focusing on 257 most affected districts in India. Using a strategy called Picket, have uniform policy, which is actually the discussion point here.
Right.
The law, if it fails to protect one, it fails to protect all. So there has to be uniformity of approach in law. Even if it is one child who's left behind, then the law has failed. So use uniformity in policy, ensure there are enough investments in education, in health, in child protection, in the ecosystem. Convergence of the ecosystem itself, which means health, protection, education should not be treated in isolation. And if one child is the beneficiary of all, then all of them should be used. Capacity building of the enforcement agencies, ensuring their accountability. Knowledge in the society, first amongst the children, then amongst the parents. than in the faith leaders and the religious leaders who are actually solemnizing this marriage. The people who are attending these marriages, the people who are providing the band baja barat. What we are actually not understanding as a society is that we are celebrating an impending rape of a child. And the last is use technology. If we are a country who can reach the moon, we can certainly manage the attendance of all our children and monitor that attendance. So ensure that there are no dropouts of school, from school, and all child attends education till the age of 18 years or whatever we decide to be the end point of marriage. On that note, I would like to end.
Important point of focusing on those districts, where we're seeing child marriages. So data are really what we need to use here. But thank you all for joining us on the program today. India aims to put a complete stop to child marriages by 2030. And clearly, we all need to work together to make that a reality. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.